Well, we've made it to the middle of 2025, and I hope you feel like that is an accomplishment. That being said, in this video, we're talking about what was originally forecasted in the East Tennessee housing market, the Knox metro area, versus what is changing. Where are we now in the middle of 2025? Are those forecasts correct? Are there any revisions to be made? So let's dive in and get going. Hey, what's up? It's me, Haley Jones, your local East Tennessee real estate agent. I help clients buy and sell land and homes and condos and everything. Anything residential you need to buy, I got you. Or land, a little commercial dabble. You know what I'm saying. That being said, I'm from Knoxville. I live in Seymour. You know the deal. I know the area, okay? I'm a former high school math teacher, was deep with Knox County schools, and decided I don't have the right temperament to be a school superintendent, because that was my original goal. Anyways, that being said, now I'm teaching you about real estate in the area. So that being said, let's talk about what was originally forecasted versus where we are now. So earlier in 2025, with East Tennessee Realtors Association, that is the Knox area, Knox metro area MLS, every year they produce a forecast for what they think is going to happen for that year. So this year they had kind of three major predictions. They also interestingly made a little prediction about the mortgage rates, which, you know, whatever. Essentially, both then and now, they're like, we don't know what's going to happen with the mortgage rate. So beginning of year 2025, you don't know. And the middle of 2025, the thing is like no one knows, okay? So that being said, what they predicted earlier this year was that the lock-in effect of people in lower mortgage rates, where people didn't want to move or didn't want to sell because they had a mortgage rate of 2.96 or 3, it was under 4, basically. A lot of people with mortgage rates under 4 were locked in. They were like, we are not leaving. And now that impact, even further down the road into 2025, is waning. In other words, like, life is happening. People are having babies. People are getting married. People are getting divorced. People are passing away. And as a result, properties are being bought and sold regardless of the mortgage rate, which on one hand is positive, because the way the East Tennessee Realtors government affairs person termed it, Marie McKell, she said that essentially buyers are more resilient to the mortgage rates than initially thought. So that's kind of a positive. You know, you can look at it like, well, it's not great. But that being said, the whole thing with the mortgage rates, nobody knows. So that prediction is kind of, they had predicted by the end of 2025, maybe somewhere 6 to 6.6, which we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. So mortgage rates, not really a revision on that piece of the forecast. For median home sales, the prediction at the beginning of 2025 was that they would be up by 2.9% compared to 2024. Sales in 2024 were actually up 6.5%, which is good. But that being said, right now the forecast originally was 2.9%, and that actually remains for 2025. So what they noted in this updated forecast for the rest of 2025 is single family home price growth decelerated in 2024, but remains above both the area historic average and national averages. Home prices in the Knoxville metro statistical area rose 6.5%, as I said, in 2024. And according to the home price index, down from 11.3% in the previous year. Home price growth will offset by loosened inventory and demand. So what they're saying is, essentially what we've seen in 2025 is a more normalizing of the market, because obviously in 2020, things went cray. We had COVID, and 2021, 2022, we had these insane mortgage rates, and we had a ton of people migrating into the area. We still have a significant amount of people migrating into the area, but there was such low inventory. We had people migrating in, and mortgage rates were crazy, which meant our inventory kind of dropped out. dropped out of the bottom. And now what we're seeing is an inventory is more normalizing, which means that price growth is not, that appreciation is not so crazy. And so the initial prediction for 2025 was an annual price increase around 2.9%. So that was the beginning of 2025. And you'll be happy to note that that number they're sticking to, a 2.9% growth over the year. Now, of course, as we already discussed, she was very careful. And in this report, if you want to go read all 41 pages, there is a thing, as I mentioned, called a mortgage rate, okay? So if mortgage rates come down, we will likely see price appreciation go up because people are going to be like, wow, lower mortgage rates, let's go. So price, we'll see. But as of right now, the forecast remains as it was in the beginning of the year, 2.9%. Okay, so one of the next things that was predicted, and this is really the only major revision to the original forecast, and this is about total sales. So initially, at the beginning of 2025, East Tennessee Realtors predicted that home sales would be up 8.7%. Now, they did make a caveat that this is going to very much depend on what's happening with mortgage rates. I keep saying that mortgage rates, okay, but it is what it is. However, in the middle of 2025, East Tennessee Realtor says, over the previous 3 years, seasonally adjusted year-over-year home sales dropped steeply by 9% in 2022 and 15% in 2023, before recovering at a positive 1.8% growth in 2024. Inventory and demand increased significantly in 2025, but are tempered by consumer hesitancy surrounding national events. I'm trying really hard not to laugh out loud because a sarcastic person in me wants to be like, what national events? Anyways, basically, people aren't sure what's going on. And that's not even just about mortgage rates. That's about what's happening at the broader scale of the world, right? You're uncertain. I'm uncertain. Who knows what's going to happen? As a result of this uncertainty, people are, it's not a lock-in effect about a mortgage rate. It's like a lock-in effect of like, what the hell is going on around here? So depending on what happens nationally, I had a client today tell me that her son, he's a big finance guy. He feels that November, December, we're going to see things loosen. So, and that people are not going to feel so, like what's happening. Who knows? I don't know. We don't know. But that being said, essentially what they originally said, like we're going to have about 8.9% higher sales of homes. And actually they're thinking that's not going to be the case. It's going to be closer to 6.1% increase in home sales. Again, as I keep saying, also what happens with mortgage rates will also impact this. So if we see mortgage rates come down, we will see a higher rate of sales. So that being said, you know, who knows? But that's the major revision, is that what was originally predicted to be more sales, 8.9%, now predicted to be 6.1% by the end of the year. Okay, so the other prediction has to do with the rental market. So at the beginning of this year, 2025, the occupancy rate was predicted to be around 96.7% by the end of 2025. And they've kept to that. Now, she did make mention of the fact that she actually thinks this could be a little bit higher depending on what happens with the market. She writes, rent growth slowed in 2024. Rents in the area rose only 0.5% from the previous year in Q4 2024. While apartment stock has increased and helped to slow price growth, demand is still outpacing supply. The apartment occupancy rate declined throughout 2024, landing at 95.6% in Q4 2024, but remaining among the nation's highest. Occupancy is expected to stay steady in 2025 at 96.7%. And in this report, again, if you want to go read it, there is a graph that's showing this occupancy rate tick, 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 tick up. Now, why is that? Well, they say in this report that essentially on both home builds and rental apartment builds, rentals in general, Knoxville has not done a good job of building enough. And she even says, like, for when it comes to houses themselves, we're about 20,000 less units than where we should be. as far as building goes, over the past, I think she said 10-year period, like we're way lower. And same with apartments, just not creating enough. So anyways, her thing is that we're going to continue to see where, it's going to be tougher to find an apartment. Occupancy rates are creeping back up essentially and are going to be near that 97%. At one point we were at like over 98% occupied, making it really hard to find a place to rent. And I actually have clients right now going through this exact thing where, yes, could they find a place to rent? Yes. However, it was going to require your first month's rent, obviously, your deposit, and then 3 months total rent in your bank account. So after taking out your first month rent and your deposit. So it was like $4,000 or whatever for those two things. And then it was like a $3,000 for 3 months. So that's $4,000 plus $9,000, $13,000. They needed to have over $13,000 in an account, and they're just not in a position where they have that. And so as a result, the people won't even let them apply because they don't even have proof of that. Or I guess they applied and they don't have it on the application. They're like, we're not even considering you to rent to. So it's tough. And that leads into this other part of this, but I want to just touch on this issue about the second half of 2025 and hammer this point in one more time. So in this report, she says, the outlook for East Tennessee's housing market for the second half of 2025 is greatly dependent on the trajectory of mortgage rates and whether any expected decrease in rates, even a small change, is realized. So while they're saying here, these are our predictions, caveat, mortgage rates. I mean, come on. Now, the other piece of this report that I wanted to bring up here is the issue of affordability. Now, in some ways, Knoxville and East Tennessee are doing great. Economically, there are some super positive things going on. Unemployment rate is good. Like, we've got some positive things happening. We've gotten attention from bigger companies, bigger corporations, because we've had such an influx of people moving here. We're pretty well insulated because we have the University of Tennessee, we've got Oak Ridge National Lab, and again, we've got industries moving, we've got the Smoky Mountains, we have a ton of things working in our favor, and comparatively, we are less impacted by major weather events. Now, obviously, Hurricane Helene is a thing, so I don't want to downplay that. That being said, we are much more insulated from major weather events than a lot of other places, and as a result, this works to our favor and keeps us a bit more stable than other markets. And she even points out, like, if you look at Memphis, like, that housing market is really struggling. And prices are massively decreasing. People are losing equity. It's not good. She makes a point that, if you're waiting 6 months to purchase a home because you're thinking prices are going to come down, that's not going to happen in this area. So it's not going to benefit you to wait 6 months if you're wanting a cheaper price. Now, could mortgage rates change? Yes. But we don't know. So her whole point was waiting 6 months to a year. If you're thinking prices are going to come down, it's not going to happen because of where we are in our current inventory. We're still not, in a place where we've got thousands and thousands and over inventory. We're just not there. So anyways, that's a positive. However, because we have seen such an influx of people, because we've underbuilt, because our inventory dropped out of the bottom, with all those mortgage rates, we'd underbuilt all that time. We don't have enough houses on the market. Prices did skyrocket. And actually in this report, again, you can go read it, but there is a graphic that shows, it says, if your East Tennessee home was valued at, please hear this, if your East Tennessee home was valued at $250,000 in 2020, that it would be worth $430,000 in 2025. Look at that. So look, here it goes. 250 in 2020, 430. And if you're on the podcast, if you're listening to the audio, go check out this video so you can see the graphic, or you can click on the link for the report. But it would be worth 430,000 in 2025. So I'm just telling you, when people are like, they bought that for 250 in 2020 and now they want, listen, let it go. You gotta let it go. Because if you were the seller of that house, you would list the house at market price, period, point blank. Let that nonsense go. Let it go, okay? So that being said, affordability is a problem, because you know what has not increased that much is how much people are making. Incomes have not increased that much. And so a kind of depressing piece of this report is about affordability and the idea that the median household income in Knoxville is around $70,000, which means the average person, average household in Knoxville cannot afford the majority of homes listed for sale. She even says, let me read you this exact stat. She says that based on the region's median household income of $70,000, the maximum affordable price is $229,977. Families making this amount could afford only 15% of active listings. To afford just half of all homes for sale in the area, a family would need to earn more than $136,000 annually, which is twice that median income amount. Just under twice, right? So she says a family earning the median household income of $69,734 wanting to spend the maximum affordable home price would find that fewer than 1 in 10 listings are within reach. To afford half the homes, again, they're going to need to make $136,450, which is double that median amount. Now, here's the thing about a $229,000 house just in Knoxville. If you were to go to Zillow right now, like at the time of this video, I'm going to go to Zillow and I'm going to say I want to buy. I'm going to put the price max at $250, which is still higher than that. And I'm going to see what it says. 259 results in Knoxville altogether. Now, here's the problem with a lot of homes in that price point. A lot of homes in that price point are not in great condition, or they are small. They don't support a family. Now, she does make the argument that we have too many bigger homes, like too many bigger homes that people can't afford, when actually we have a increasing amount of people that is just one person in the household. So we don't need these big homes. I don't need big pieces of property. But anyways, that being said, I do think this whole affordability thing is obviously an issue. And so in the report, she talks about like here, you know, we're gonna need local government to get involved, community members, etc., so that we're building housing that can accommodate affordability essentially and can accommodate our residents, because we have seen that what people are making has increased in the area. However, it seems to be in large part because people moving here have kept their jobs. They can work remotely and they're making a higher amount, which means that people at a lower income that are from Knoxville are being pushed out. So that's kind of her take on affordability. When I say her, I'm talking about Maria McKell, the government affairs person for East Tennessee Realtor. She's the one that put this report together. And just another touch on affordability. Essentially, you know, she says most residents can only afford a small share of active listings. And so if you look at listings that are essentially, if you're making $75,000 a year, you can afford 16%, $50,000, 60%, $35,000, 5%. So I'm just thinking of myself like as a teacher. I could never buy a house, period, point blank. I mean, I had so much student loan debt. Like I was making $0 as a teacher, not literally, but literally, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, and obviously like there are some programs or whatever, but that's not really enough, you know? So anyways, that being said, this report goes a lot into affordability, and she essentially says, this is an issue right now. As we look at the state of housing in the Knoxville and East Tennessee area, this is a problem. And it's not just in Knoxville. Prices are being driven up in outlying counties as well, even more rural places than Knoxville. So it's just kind of an interesting thing. And then just for comparison's sake, so you can kind of just see this 2023 versus 2024. Essentially, in 2023, the median sales price was $337,433. In 2024, it was $364,803, which is a change of $27,000. Your down payment cost, because of that change, went up $3,500. Monthly principal and interest went up $210. So you got an additional $210 on average more per month just on your mortgage, your principal and interest. That's not even like other costs. Homeowner costs up $242 per month. So that's $452 a month additional if you compare 2023 versus 2024. And essentially, to afford that, your annual income between 2023 to 2024 in the area would need to increase $9,600 over that year, which maybe some people are getting that increase. But her whole thing here is like, this is not, like, we have an affordability problem. And she shows a chart that compares affordability from 1973 to 2025. And essentially, this chart shows that we're at an all-time, like a 40-year low. Things have not been this expensive or unaffordable in the Knoxville area since 1985. Anyways, that's a little bit depressing way to end this. So really the only change is that what they had initially thought that we were going to have almost 9% sales increase is now looking closer to the 6% amount. So lesser home sales than they thought. That's due to mortgage rates. That's due to uncertainty of what's happening within the national government, nationally, what's going on in the world as well. So anyhow, we will see how 2025 ends. On a positive note, as I said, East Tennessee is well positioned in terms of what we do have to offer. Like University of Tennessee is not going anywhere. Oak Ridge National Lab is not going anywhere. The Smoky Mountains, they are not going anywhere. And those are all things that are really positive for our market. They make this a desirable place to be, which makes this a great place. It's just that when we look at affordability and what our average median income residents can afford, this is kind of pricing people out, which we need all kinds of people here. We don't just need one or the other on either extreme. So anyways, that being said, I hope this has been informative as always. I may make a second video that kind of dives into some of the economic pieces, but these were kind of the important stuff that I thought would be the most helpful things to know. I also just want to say that I am not about that negative life. In other words, this is not intended to be like, God, we suck. This is just intended to be an informational piece. There's some positives going on. There's some negatives going on. And as consumers, as people buying and selling homes, as community members, it's good to know what's going on, but also realizing like we've got room for growth in terms of like the types of housing that we're building. Maria McKell made the point that, we have builders that are wanting to do more high density building, where it's not just one house on an acre or one house on a quarter acre. It's more like, we have builders that are wanting to do, a 12 complex unit. But what happens is more vocal community members, which I'm all for vocal community members. That's not what I'm saying. But you might have people participating in a meeting whenever someone's like, this is what we're going to build. And then people give backlash that we don't want 12 houses. But she said, sometimes those people live 2 miles away and it's not even in their local area. They're just opposed to it. So that kind of thing is just more about educating the community what we need in the area so that everybody can live here, which is what we want, right? So anyhow, that being said, super interesting report in my mind. Obviously, this is what I do day in and day out. So I think it's, good to know. And also I am a lover of Knoxville. So, when I think about the great things that are happening in Knoxville, we do have some great things happening, but also, we've got some areas for growth, and we want things to be affordable, and we want people to be able to live here. So that being said, that's all for this updated 2025. You made it halfway through the year report. If you have questions, you can always call me, text me, email me, and always click subscribe because I have so much more to share with you. I'm Haley Jones, and I'll see you on the next video.